Assalamu alaikum, Miss Fatma is speaking. I hope you are in good health. Today, inshallah, we'll discuss some approaches of teaching foreign language. There are many factors that successful English. One of them is approach. Approach is the way of teachers to transfer the knowledge to the students, besides encourages their motivation to learn. Teachers should be creative and smart in choosing and using an appropriate approach. Teacher can use grammar translation method as the way they teach. In the first part of this lecture, we'll discuss these points about the grammar translation method, introduction, objectives of the grammar translation method, definition, history of grammar translation, principles and techniques, teaching through grammar translation method, advantages and disadvantages of the grammar translation method. The grammar translation method of foreign language teaching is one of the most traditional methods. The grammar translation method was called the classical method since it was first used in the teaching of the classical languages such as Latin and Greek. Grammar translation method means a traditional technique of foreign language teaching based on explicit instruction in the grammatical analysis of the target language and the translation of sentences from the native language into the target language and vice versa. Grammar translation method is a way of studying a language that approaches the language first through detailed analysis of its grammar rules, followed by the application of this knowledge through the task of translating sentences and text into and out of the target language. The main objectives of grammar translation method are to read literature in target language. The ultimate objective of the method is to be able to read and understand written target language literature through the study of the grammar of the target language. The culture of the target language is confined to the literature and the fine arts. The second objective of this method is to develop minds. It was thought that foreign language learning would help students grow intellectually. Language learning is a mental exercise. Learning a foreign language is a good mental exercise for students. Learning of the target language empowers the students mentally. The ability to communicate in the target language is not a goal of foreign language instruction in this method. Hence, the emphasis on reading and writing rather than listening and speaking. In brief, the original purpose of direct method is helping students read and appreciate foreign language literature. Students can become more familiar with the grammar of their native language, also write and speak their native language better. This method is helpful for mental exercise. What is grammar translation method? The definition of the grammar translation method. The grammar translation method of foreign language teaching is one of the most traditional methods. It was originally used to teach dead languages and literature, such as Latin and Greek, involving little or no spoken communication or listening comprehension. History of grammar translation method. Grammar translation method is the oldest method of teaching. The grammar translation method is a foreign language teaching method derived from classical, sometimes called traditional method of teaching Greek and Latin. This method has been used from the classical times of translate classical languages, Latin and Greek. It has been called the classical method. Direct method was used for the teaching of English in the beginning under the influence of the classical languages like Latin and Greek. Yeah. In the grammar translation method, the student first studied the parts of speech and syntax in detail. The sentences in English and the mother tongue were compared and contrasted side by side. In this method, the mother tongue is used to teach English. So, grammar translation is a way of studying a language that approaches the language first through detailed analysis of its grammar rules, followed by application of this knowledge to the task. Of translating sentences and text into and out of the target language. Summary of the principles of the grammar translation method. The objective of the method is to be able to read and understand written target language literature. The culture of the target language is confined to the literature and the fine arts. Literary language is superior to spoken language. An important goal is for students to be able to translate each language into the other. Those are the successful language learners. The ability to communicate in the target language is not a good for foreign language instruction. Emphasis on reading and writing rather than listening and speaking. Grammar and vocabulary are the basic language elements. Emphasized pronunciation is neglected. Form is emphasized over function. The teacher is the authority in the class. It is important that the students get the correct answer from the teacher. The teacher is as a model. In this method, learning is facilitated through attention to similarities between the target language and the mother tongue. Deductive teaching of grammar language learning provides a good mental exercises. Exercises of a class using the grammar translation method. Some of these exercises are translation of a literary passage, reading comprehension questions, antonym, synonyms, fill in the blanks, deductive application of rules. Let's to discuss and give more details about these activities and techniques. Techniques of grammar translation method. One of them is translation of a literary passage. Students will be asked to read a literary passage and then translate the target language into their native language. Translation may be written or spoken. Translation made by the students can show that they understand their meaning. The ability of communicating in the target language is not a goal. In this technique, the students ask questions in their native language and are also answered by the teacher. Also in their native language. The teacher asks students in their native language. Deductive application of rules. In this technique, it is important for students to learn about the forms, grammar rules of the target language. Grammar rules are represented with examples. Students are asked to apply the rules to examples they are given. Reading comprehension questions. In this activity, the students answer these questions in the target language. Answers to the questions may be in the reading text or based on the understanding of the students or students' own experiences related to the text. Teacher as the authority. In this activity, teacher decides whether the students' answers are correct. It is important for students to get the correct answers. If students answer incorrectly, the teacher will provide the correct answer, or the teacher selects a different student to give the correct answer. So there is little student-student interaction. Yes. Memorization. In this technique, students are asked to memorize new words, grammatical rules, and verb conjugation. Fill in the blanks. Teacher gives students sentences with word missing. Students should fill in the blanks with the new vocabulary or with particular grammar type. Use words in sentences. In this technique, students are asked to make up sentences with the new words they learn in the text. This technique can show whether students really understand the new words. Composition. Yes. In this technique, students are asked to write a composition in the target language. The topic is based on some aspects of the reading passage. Teaching through grammar translation method. In this method, yes, a class working with the grammar translation method looks like this. Classes are taught in the mother tongue with little active use of the target language. Much vocabulary is taught in the form of lists of isolated words. Long elaborate explanations of grammar are given. Grammar provides the rule for putting words together, and instruction often focuses on the form and inflection of words. Reading of difficult classical texts is begun early. Little attention is paid to the content of texts, which are treated as exercises in grammatical analysis. Objectives of a grammar translation method. Okay, in the completion, okay, of the lecture, مثلا, of the lesson, okay, students expect to be able to read literature written in the target language, to be able to translate from one language to another, to develop reading and writing skills. Language usage. Language 1 usage. Classes are conducted in the native language. Classroom instructions are given in language 1. Language 2 usage. The foreign language use is limited. Classroom will use foreign language for language 2. Language skills. Okay. Read literature in the target language is the aim of this method. Yes. Also, speaking is not an important aspect of the method. Writing and reading are studied at the same time. Listening, okay, little attention is given to listening. There is no listening training, yes, and little or no attention for pronunciation. Advantages of using grammar translation method in teaching. Translation is the easiest and shortest way of explaining meaning of words and phrases. Learners have no difficulties to understand the lesson as it is carried out in the mother tongue. It is a labor-saving method as the teacher carries out everything in the mother tongue. Easiest for teachers to use. It doesn't require teachers to speak good English or make good lesson preparations. It only uses the textbook. Less stressful for students. Teaching occurs in the first language. Students learn the new language without contact with native speakers. Yeah. Criticism for grammar translation method. The main disadvantage of this method is it does virtually nothing to enhance the student's communicative ability in the language and inability to verbally communicate using the target language. This method gives students the wrong idea of what language is and of the relationship between languages. Language is seen as a collection or words which are isolated and independent. Worst effect of this method is on students' motivation because students can't succeed. This method leads to frustration, boredom, and indiscipline. It seemed there was no need for students to master the 4 skills of English listening, speaking, reading, and writing. The grammar translation method is the easiest for a teacher to employ. It doesn't require a teacher to speak a good English or make good lesson preparations. Teachers frustrated by the limits of the grammar translation method in terms of its inability to create communicative competence in students began to experiment with new ways of teaching language like direct method in post-war and Depression-era classrooms. This method's name comes from the fact that meaning is to be conveyed directly in the target language, and it's also called natural method as it's based on the way children learn their native language. So the direct method of teaching was developed as a response to the grammar translation method. It sought to immerse the learner in the same way as when a first language is learned. Yes, in this method, the teacher and the students are more like partners in the teaching and learning process. Teacher-student interaction became fuller, guessing of context or content, completing fill-in blanks, and doing cloze exercises were order of the day. Teacher is as the facilitator of the language, and the students are the active learners who are active in learning and exploring the target language. In this part of lecture, inshallah, we will discuss these points related to the direct method, introduction, history of direct method, theoretical assumption, aims of direct method, definition, principles, techniques, and strategies of this method, rules of teacher, rules of student, advantages and disadvantages of direct method. The direct method of teaching, which is also called the natural method, the reform method, or the anti-grammatical method, is often used in teaching foreign language. This method is established in Germany and France and originated at the 19th century. It contrasts with the grammatical translation method. The direct method is still applied today. So, in the mid and late 19th century, Europe experienced a wave of increasing opportunities of communication due to industrialization and international trade and travel. A need was felt to develop oral proficiency in foreign languages. Its principle, they proposed what they called natural method that suggests radical change from grammar translation, a method that later on came to be known as the direct method. History of direct method. It was established in Germany and France around 19th century, and it was an answer to the dissatisfaction with the older grammar translation method, which teaches students grammar and vocabulary through direct translations and thus focuses on the written language. One of its main proponents was the German Maximilian Berlitz, whose schools in the form of Berlitz International exist to this day. The direct method is sometimes called the natural method, not limited to but often used in teaching foreign languages. The method refrains from using the learner's native language and uses only the target language. It's named direct because meaning should be connected directly with the target language without translation into the native language. Definition of direct method. Method of teaching foreign language without use of mother tongue, without translation, and without study of formal grammar. It involves association of words and symbols with their meaning by use of discussion, dramatization, gestures, and pictures, etc. Intense stress of listening and speaking skills. The direct method, of language teaching is also called the reform method, the natural method, the anti-grammatical method, the Perlet's method. Theoretical assumption. Language can be learned only through demonstration. Instead of analytical procedures of explaining grammar rules, students must be encouraged to use language naturally and spontaneously so that they induce grammar. So, yes, teaching grammar inductively. Yes. The learning of second language was seen as parallel to the acquisition of the child's first language. This method therefore emphasized the importance of sounds, simple sentences, and direct association of language with object and person of immediate environment, the classroom, the home, the garden, etc. The learning of second, yes, the direct method aims at establishing the direct bond between thought and expressions and between experience and language. It is based on the assumption that the learner should experience the new language in the same way as he experienced his mother tongue. The main features of direct method are: only the use of target language is allowed in class. Students are encouraged to think in the target language. Grammar should be taught inductively. This method is based on sound principles of education. It believes in introducing the particular before general, concrete before abstract, and practice before theory. Okay, the main objectives of direct method, are the objectives of direct method enable students to think in English, to grasp what they read or hear as they grasp their mother tongue, to express their thoughts fluently in English. Principles of direct method. Classroom instruction is conducted exclusively in the target language. The teacher should demonstrate, not explain or translate. Never translate, just demonstrate. Yes. Only everyday vocabulary and sentences are taught. Basic vocabulary is given first. Vocabulary is taught through known words, demonstration, authentic objectives. Authentic objects means real. Okay, authentic objects mean real. Pictures and miming. The purpose of language learning is communication. Therefore, students need to learn how to ask questions as well as answer them. Communication first preference. Grammar is taught inductively. There may never be an explicit grammar rule given. Don't give rules. Make them figure out the rule. New teaching points are introduced orally. Both speech and listening comprehension are taught. Yes. Concrete vocabulary is taught through demonstration, objectives, and pictures. Abstract vocabulary is taught by association of ideas. Yes. Both speech and listening comprehension are taught. Correct pronunciation is emphasized. Students should learn to think in the target language as soon as possible. Students should be speaking at least 89% of the time during the lesson. Students are taught from inception to ask questions as well as answer them. The teacher the teacher, by asking the students to make a choice, gets him to correct his own error. Learning by self-correction. The syllabus is based on situations or topics, not usually on linguistic structures. Techniques of direct method. Learners are motivated to think in English, to ask questions, and give answers in English. A proper exercise for listening and speaking. Use of various teaching aids such as charts, pictures, and audio-video devices. Strategies, the teacher can use, in applying direct method in the class. Question and answer. The teacher asks questions of any nature and the students answer. Dictation. In this activity, the teacher chooses a grade appropriate passage and reads the text aloud. Teacher reads the passage 3 times. Reading aloud. Students take turn reading sections of a passage, play, or dialogue out loud. Getting students to self-correct. The teacher should have the students self-correct by offering them a choice between what they said and the correct answer. Conversation practice. The teacher asks students a number of questions in the target language, which the students are able to answer correctly. Later, the students ask each other their own questions using the same grammatical structures. Map drawing. Students are given a map without labeled. Then the students label it by using the directions the teacher gives. Paragraph writing. In this activity, the students are asked to write a passage in their own words. They can do this from memory or use a reading passage in the lesson as a model. The goal of teachers in this method is to encourage students to think in the target language. The role of the teacher is to direct the class activities, and the role of the student is more active than they are in the grammar translation method. The interaction between student and teacher can go both ways. Teacher to students, students to teacher. The teacher and the students are like partners in the teaching and learning process. Students can also converse each other in the target language. Teacher rule. The teacher asks questions. So the students can answer. Anyway, the teacher has to show object or perform the action to clear his concept. The teacher should teach vocabularies, sentences, or grammars through real life objects and other visual materials. The teacher chooses a grade appropriate passage and reads the text aloud. So the teachers introduce a new target language word or a phrase to the students, and there is no mother tongue. The teacher is a facilitator and monitor. The teacher is the source. Learning by self-correction. Learner rules. The student needs to learn how to ask questions as well as answer them. The student comes with the contact of mother language and after with the target language. The learner should think and express into the target language. The student needs to take turn reading sections of passage, play, or dialogue out loud. Yes? The teacher and the students are more like partners in the teaching and learning process. The students should be active learner, observer, and practitioner the target language. In brief, teacher's rule. Is the rule of the teacher is to direct the class activities encourage students to participate in class and correct their mistakes immediately, but students and teachers are partners in the learning process. Students are very active. Oral communication skills are emphasized. There is a large amount of learner-learner interaction. The teacher, using various techniques, tries to get students to self-correct whenever possible. Students' native language shouldn't be used in the classroom. Just, the use of mother tongue. Yes. Advantages of using direct method. Yes. Direct method helps learners to acquire correct pronunciation. It provides better understanding, time saving. It is helpful in teaching idioms. It provides better fluency of language. Okay, this method based on psychological principles. Okay, there is no gap between active and passive vocabularies. It is one of the first methods to introduce the teaching of vocabulary through reals, yes, with authentic objects. Criticism for this approach or for this method, direct method is difficult as there is no use of mother tongue. It is not economical as it requires various teaching aids. It may not be suitable for average and weaker students. It needs competent teachers. It gives overemphasis on listening and speaking skills. Also, it is not effective in early stages of learning. After a short popularity in the beginning of the 20th century, it soon began to lose its appeal because of these constraints. It then paved the way to the idiolingual method. Thank you. I hope this